August 25th, 1944. Amidst the ruins of a war-torn Europe, a symbol of hope rises over Paris. The French flag, once lowered in defeat, now ascends above the Eiffel Tower, marking a city's defiant stand against occupation. But the journey to this triumphant moment was fraught with tension, strategy, and the looming threat of total destruction. Just hours before, inside the grand walls of Hotel Meurice, the German commander faces a dire choice: obey a Führer's destructive orders or preserve the heart of Paris. What led to this moment? Who truly saved Paris from becoming a heap of rubble? As we reflect on the significance of this historic day, it's crucial to recall that, 80 years ago, the city's future was uncertain. It's said that Hitler commanded the demolition of Paris rather than surrendering it to the Allies. The preservation of Paris is often credited to, ironically, a German general hailed as the City of Light's rescuer. However, a quick look at Paris's military status in August 1944 suggests that the ability of the German occupiers to destroy Paris and the German general's role in saving it are likely exaggerated. The true story of how Paris was spared from ruin is explored in this video, revealing a lesser-known yet intriguing history. Paris didn't play a major role in the Allied strategy for moving towards Germany. Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight D. Eisenhower explicitly directed that Paris be bypassed by Allied forces to avoid severe damage during a drawn-out fight with German defenders. Yet, Paris became a battleground due to the French longing to reclaim their capital and erase the disgrace of their 1940 defeat. The lasting scenes of German troops parading past the Arc de Triomphe after the D-Day landings on June 6, 1944 in Normandy illustrate the intense resistance they offered for weeks to maintain their position. Did you know that during the German occupation, the Eiffel Tower's elevator cables were intentionally cut by the French so that the Nazis would be forced to climb the stairs if they wanted to reach the top? This act of passive resistance meant that the German swastika flag was raised with difficulty, and at one point, a smaller flag had to be used because the original was too heavy to fly properly in the wind. The Eiffel Tower remained a symbol of resilience and defiance throughout the occupation, silently reminding Parisians of their enduring spirit. These subtle yet significant acts of defiance were emblematic of the broader French resistance, which, both in spirit and action, set the stage for the larger struggle that would soon engulf the city. As the Allies pushed forward from Normandy, their strategic maneuvers forced the Germans into a disorganized retreat, culminating in the brutal Battle of Falaise Pocket from August 12th to 21st. This battle marked a pivotal moment where German forces were decimated or left scrambling on foot, abandoning their tanks and equipment in a desperate attempt to escape the tightening Allied encirclement. The aftermath, grimly dubbed the Corridor of Death, left over 10,000 German soldiers dead and a wasteland of shattered military hardware. This chaos weakened the German army significantly and set the stage for the liberation of Paris as Allied forces, including the Free French units under General Charles de Gaulle, pressed forward, determined to reclaim the French capital Paris. For 4 years, the French resistance, known as the French Forces of the Interior or the FFI, had been vigorously active. By 1944, Paris boasted a substantial FFI presence of 20,000 within its civilian population. On August 15th, the FFI was ordered to rise against the German occupation. When General de Gaulle was informed of the uprising, he urgently implored Eisenhower to redirect Allied forces to assist Paris, fearing that without sufficient support, the resistance might be brutally suppressed by the Germans. Amid the chaos and the seemingly imminent downfall of Paris, the city's inhabitants displayed remarkable resilience and unity. From artists and intellectuals to ordinary workers, the people of Paris bolstered the resistance with clandestine publications, covert meetings, and acts of sabotage. This grassroots effort helped sustain the morale of the city and disrupt German operations, which proved crucial in the days leading up to the liberation. The spirit of Paris, immortalized in countless films and songs, truly came to life as every quarter prepared to reclaim their city from occupation. This cultural resistance was a vital component of the overall effort, reflecting how Parisians fought not just for their city's physical liberation, but also for the preservation of its soul and identity, which was under constant threat from the occupiers. As the battle for Paris intensified, the cultural heritage of the city became an unlikely participant in the struggle. Museums, galleries, and libraries were transformed into bastions of resistance. with priceless artworks and manuscripts hidden away or used as symbols of defiance. The Louvre in particular played a crucial role, serving as a covert meeting point for resistance leaders. This intertwining of art and resistance not only protected the city's treasures but also reinforced the resolve of Parisians, reminding them of what they were fighting to preserve. Without waiting for Eisenhower's response, General Charles de Gaulle decisively commanded General Philippe Leclerc of the 2nd Armored Division to undertake an immediate assault on Paris. The city's inhabitants rallied to disrupt the German defences by any means available. On August 15th, key civil services ground to a halt as employees of the Paris Metro, police and Gendarmerie walked out, a strike that spread to postal workers the very next day and escalated into a city-wide general strike by August 18th. Concurrently, the newly appointed German commander, General Dietrich von Choltitz, found himself critically hampered by the inadequate forces at his disposal. Positioned at the Hotel Meurice since August 8th, his contingent of merely 20,000 soldiers, poorly trained and ill-equipped, struggled to maintain any semblance of control under increasing pressure from the French uprising. The main force was a 325th Security Division, composed of average or questionable quality troops, supported by 20 batteries of 8.8cm flat guns, a few Panther tanks, and repurposed French tanks. Crucially, Choltitz reported to his superiors a lack of sufficient explosives and engineers needed to execute the demolitions ordered by Hitler to transform Paris into a fortress, as well as insufficient manpower to defend the city effectively. These constraints meant that German resistance would be both limited and brief. By August 19th, Choltitz's forces had set up barricades and defences in the city's west and south, prepared to slow the expected Allied push. However, with severe manpower shortages, the Germans struggled to counter the growing momentum of the French resistance, which quickly took over buildings and fortified streets with fallen trees and trenches. Despite the FFI's shortage of arms and ammunition, and their inability to dislodge the remaining German units without external support, Swedish Consul Raoul Nordling mediated between the sides. On August 20th, this mediation culminated in a ceasefire agreement, initiating a brief pause in hostilities. However, divergent views among the resistant factions led to renewed conflict on August 21st. German tanks desperately searched for vulnerabilities near the Hotel de Ville. Announcements boomed. Citizens to arms.
Here is the call. Citizens to arms.
Then came Hitler's dire directive on August 23rd. A command to Choltitz stating, Paris must not fall into enemy hands unless as a heap of rubble. Choltitz's troops had rigged several bridges and monuments for demolition in line with the initial defense order, but Hitler's subsequent mandate for widespread destruction was an exercise in futility. Realistically, at this juncture, the Germans were incapable of fulfilling such a directive even if Choltitz had intended to comply. He controlled only minimal sections of the city. His troops were barricaded in key buildings or street blocks, with FFI barricades and trenches severely hindering vehicular movement, making it perilous to set additional explosives, potentially causing German casualties. Indeed, some key sites were prepared for demolition, but Choltitz opted against executing Hitler's command, particularly after learning at dawn on August 24th that Allied armoured units had reached Paris's outskirts. General Leclerc led his French 2nd Armoured Division in two groups, battling stiff German resistance on the city's periphery. To embolden the FFI inside the city, Leclerc dispatched a small team to drive towards the city centre. The day before, Choltitz had commanded German troops to counter the FFI's central Paris manoeuvres. German forces had engaged at the Grand Palais, a key FFI stronghold, and German tanks had targeted French barricades on various streets. However, Choltitz refrained from the total destruction Hitler demanded. Leclerc's advance team was led by Captain Raymond Dron, with 160 soldiers from the 9th Company of the Régiment de Marche de la Légion Étrangère, which included 146 Spanish Republicans. Dron's unit maneuvered through Paris in US-manufactured half-tracks and jeeps, backed by a platoon of Sherman tanks for robust support. Entering through Porte d'Italie, Dron's company arrived at the Hotel de Ville, the Paris City Hall, by 9:22 p.m. on August 24th. They engaged German forces amid a crowd of cheering civilians. Dron commanded that all city bells, including those at Notre Dame and the Sacré-Cœur, be rung. He then made his way to Choltitz's headquarters at the Hotel Maurice to demand the German general surrender. By the next morning, elements of the US 4th Infantry Division had reached the Place de la Bastille, and by the afternoon of August 25th, the British 30 Assault Unit was engaged in a conflict at the Chateau de Vincennes, which was thought to house Grand Admiral Karl Donitz's U-boat command, the German Navy submarine operations centre in France. Meanwhile, Dron's 9th Company pressed attacks on the Chamber of Deputies, the Hotel Majestic, and the Place de la Concorde, with clashes persisting across central Paris. Choltitz faced immense pressure from Hitler to carry out the destruction of Paris. However, he found himself in a military deadlock, unable to execute these orders. Likely motivated by a desire to avoid being remembered as the destroyer of Paris, and perhaps hoping for leniency from the Allies, especially given his dark past as regimental commander responsible for the deaths of 15,000 Jews and Roma in Crimea in December 1941, Choltitz chose to resist Hitler's command for widespread destruction. It's worth pondering how differently events might have unfolded had the Germans possessed sufficient resources in Paris to mount a proper defense. Such a scenario could have led to severe damages, a prolonged battle involving additional Allied forces, thereby slowing their overall advance and aiding Hitler's strategy to delay the German reorganization after setbacks in Normandy and Brittany. In the end, Choltitz surrendered without much resistance at the Hotel Maurice at 3:30 p.m. on August 25, 1944. He was then escorted to the Paris Police Prefecture to sign a formal surrender agreement. His final act was at General Leclerc's headquarters at the Gare Montparnasse, where he signed another document officially ceasing all hostilities in Paris. On the same day, de Gaulle triumphantly entered Paris, delivering a notable speech at the Hotel de Ville, declaring that Paris had freed itself, notably omitting the role of the US 4th Infantry Division in securing the victory. The following day, the French 2nd Armoured Division proudly marched down the Champs-Élysées in front of 2 million Parisians. However, as de Gaulle walked into the Place de la Concorde, German snipers fired from the Hotel de Crillon but were quickly subdued. The US 4th Infantry Division later paraded through Paris on August 29th, greeted by enthusiastic crowds. In the battle, the French resistance suffered 1,600 casualties, and the Free French forces lost 130 soldiers. Conversely, 3,200 German troops died and 12,800 were captured. Von Choltitz was detained by the British for questioning and later moved to Camp Clinton in Mississippi. He was never prosecuted for war crimes, although he had been covertly recorded in London discussing the execution of thousands of civilians on the Eastern Front. It's speculated that private French influence prevented his prosecution to avoid scandal around the so-called Saviour of Paris. Released in 1947, Choltitz returned to Paris in 1956, where he was recognised by the head barman at the Hotel Maurice. He died in Baden-Baden in 1966 due to pulmonary emphysema, attended by several prominent French military officers. Despite the complexities of his actions, Choltitz remains intertwined with the French political narrative of de Gaulle and Paris's history. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and give it a like. We'll be uploading more engaging content regularly, so stay tuned for our upcoming releases.